Habari Gani, and welcome to a dynamic Kwanzaa conversation, or shall I say, another dynamic Kwanzaa conversation. Today's principle, Nia, purpose, and how fitting that it is purpose when we have such a absolute gem of a speaker, of a thought leader, influencer today joining us. Special guest already. We're almost already into double digits. I love it when it's like this, you all. I love it when everyone is kind of on the edge of their seats waiting for these conversations because in the middle of these conversations are the opportunity for true exchange. And coming on the heels of such a pivotal and powerful conversation with none other than Brother Peter Brown yesterday, we are now forging into moving right along during this Kwanzaa week where we're taking the time to reflect, to remember, to resonate before the new year turns. And just, you guys, can you believe it? In just 2 more days, just 2 more days, we are entering into 2024 according to the calendar year. But we have such a treat today, and not just a treat because absolutely just very thought provoking in his engagement and in his work and his activism and his advocacy, as well as knowing what true allyship looks like, what it operates like, and how to absolutely facilitate true allyship, but also because of the work that he is leaving, the legacy that he is creating with being able to engage with others and lead in these same thought provoking, but also action oriented initiatives. Today, we have coming to the stage a colleague, a friend, an ally, and I'd say most importantly, an ally. We have Mr. Richard Pellegrino. He has an incredible piece of work out right now. I will be dropping the link to make sure that you all can continue to follow. If you are not already, continue to follow his work and follow his advocacy and get engaged with him. He's very, very reachable, very accessible, if you will, because when we're talking about how to introduce these conversations, how to truly facilitate this work, you want to go with people again that have done it, that know how to do it, and that know the true purpose of it getting done. What is the reason? So today's Kwanzaa conversation, again, will be on the principle of purpose, but specifically the purpose of race, reparations, and atonement. Without any hesitation, I wanted to put Richard ahead of this conversation. Why? Because I truly believe, this is not something that I think, this is not something that I pondered. I truly believe when we're talking about the discussion of race and especially what it has meant in America, we have got to, we should not, as far as American Africans or American people of color, be tasked with leading this conversation. Yes, we absolutely should be a part of the conversation because we have been so incredibly affected by it. As a matter of fact, I believe that it was the notion of race was created to absolutely affect us. But when we're talking about how to improve upon these relations, we should not be tasked with leading these conversations. And this is why I think that it is so important, if not imperative, that someone of Richard Pellegrino's background, knowing what comes with the protection because of the complexion, knowing what comes with the perks of or the persuasive nature and the influence ability of being of the complexion for the protection. We need to have more voices leading these conversations because it absolutely is real. It absolutely is real. So when we talk about a privilege and perspective, why not? Why not have someone who is in the middle, boots on the ground, understanding and fighting this fight and understanding the purpose of fighting that fight? The purpose of privilege, huh? Okay, so without further ado, we are bringing to the stage, and y'all know me, I'll be joining y'all in the chat because uh, above anything, you all, I am still a student in this life and in this realm, and I will be taking my notes and making sure that we are consistently having these conversations, consistently putting action behind these conversations. So, in regards to that, I'm still learning how to do that too. And I will be in the chat joining you all, but coming to the stage right now, we have brother, colleague, and friend, Richard Pellegrino.
Thanks very much, Courtney, and welcome everyone. Thanks for that 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 introduction and the accolades, and I'm glad that you ended it with the very real statement that we're all in this together and we're all still learning. If I ever stop learning from you, from everyone here, from people of all ages and stripes, then that's really the end. That's where life ends. It begins with the realization that we are all in this together. We're connected. Um, Dr. King, I love his statement called the network of mutuality, where we're so connected that I can't become who I'm supposed to be if you don't become who you're supposed to be. So while this is definitely allyship and this is definitely servant, we're all striving for servant leadership. Really, we can't sacrifice because everything we do for each other helps us individually achieve our authentic identity and everything in our authentic purpose, which is what we're talking about today. And I just want to level the playing field from the beginning. Although I'm obviously not a spring chicken, I've been at this for 5 decades, constantly learning, constantly trying to experience other people's realities because we really live in separate realities that were partially created by others by design to keep us apart, but also that we've adopted and we've created just to survive or to follow our elders or parents or institutions and so forth. So that's what I'm going to talk about is kind of our separate realities and how do we how do we find our authentic purpose and authentic identities within these realities that we're living in. So again, thank you. Thanks for tuning in and sharing your time on a Saturday afternoon. Hopefully we will learn from each other and move ahead working together so that we can become who and what we're supposed to be, as Dr. King laid out in that network of mutuality. And Dr. King, I will refer to a lot. By the way, both Dr. and Coretta King, I'm sorry, who the latter whom I knew and met, are my prophets, my leaders. Really, in my belief, they're the founding father and mother of the new America. We refer to America as America with KKK, America spelled with three Ks, the old America, because that's what it was. It was based on genocide, it was based on slavery, it was based on oppression, and so forth. And it really just started to come into its authentic national identity and national purpose in my lifetime in the 60s and 70s, which I was blessed to be born into. And of course, you can read all about that in my book because I break it down into decades, starting with the 50s, 60s, 70s, and so forth. The great thing about having a book is when my kids or friends or anybody ask me questions about a certain event or a certain learning experience, I can say, look, it's in chapter 4, subchapter 3 of this book. Read it. But seriously, uh, America, in my belief, started to come into its authentic identity, authentic purpose in that period. Because before that, we did not talk about, we talked about the Declaration of Independence and all men are created equal and so forth, entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which are flowery and great words. But we definitely, collectively as a nation, did not live up to that and ignored that statement for most of its existence until the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, the hippie, the Black Power movement, until the 70s, which was led by figures like Dr. King and Coretta. We always have the balance because we know the yin yang and male and female is always present. Okay. And I'm not saying that just because I have a wonderful West Indian wife and 6 daughters. I also have 2 sons, but because it's true. It's true. Mankind is a bird with 2 wings, male and female. If they don't balance, then mankind cannot fly, or humankind cannot fly. So we really came into our existence during that period. So we're really a brand new, our authentic existence, our authentic purpose. So really, we're a brand new nation, 60 years old, and so that's why there's a lot of turmoil. We're learning, we're kind of like in our adolescent period. We're trying to learn how to live up to that principle and purpose that all men are created equal or all people are created equal. And that's why my nickname is Rich the Equalizer Pellegrino, because anytime I hear anyone exalting themselves or their group, their race, their religion, their nationality above another, that's not reality. That's not our purpose to exalt ourselves. Our purpose is to find oneness. And it's beautiful that Courtney and her group, Plantations for Reparations, came up with the series. And the theme for this day, Naya, if I'm saying it right, uh, is purpose and as it relates to race, reparations, and atonement. So I'm going to start with atonement. This is a powerful concept. I call it, and you'll hear me change both the meaning and pronunciation of words because, again, we're creating our own language, our own reality now. It's been created for us for centuries by groups that wanted control and wanted power and were not necessarily righteous. Somebody explained to me the tribes of, the many different tribes of Israel when they were dispersed and populated the world, that some became takers and some became givers, right, or sharers. So we want to get back to our reality, our authentic purpose of being the givers and sharers, the Native Americans, the traditional African villages, and so forth, following their lead. So I changed the word atonement to at one mint, okay, which is what it is, at one mint, okay, and that, in my belief, again, remember, there's we're talking about reality, okay, and truth. We're all seekers, hopefully, after truth, right? There's my truth, my reality. There's your truth and your reality. And there's the objective truth and reality out there that we're all trying to come together with. So anything I say is open to debate, discussion. This is based on my experience. And that's how we come to me uh, to objective truth through consultation, through sharing, and trying to look through each other's eyes and experiences. Empathy. So, uh, back to at one mint, okay, that again is is the the reality of this universe to me. Oneness. When I talk about wokefulness, and you'll see in my book and the papers that documents that I've produced that I'll be able to send to you if you like in PDF form after this program. Okay, the the basis is on trying to trying to find reality, trying to find truth, trying to find authentic purpose and identity. That search that's never ending. And when I define wokefulness as is oneness, oneness. My shirt here, world citizen, oneness. Okay, because that's the essential reality of the universe. We're one. And we have to figure out how to get back to our oneness. Not only are we one in the human kingdom, okay, not only is humanity one, but we're one with all living things. That's the native, the indigenous teaching, indigenous African, indigenous Australian, Native American, and so forth. Okay, oneness with all living things, the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the human kingdom. We're talking about humanity today, okay, which is supposed to be the highest kingdom in evolution. Why? Because we have mind, body, and spirit. We have all of the faculties of the other kingdoms below us, okay? But that gives us a greater responsibility not to abuse them, not to abuse our environment, not to abuse our animal friends and our plants, all living things. So when I hear the word atonement, I immediately relate to at one mint. Okay, how do I even the concept, the popular concept of atonement being forgiveness? Okay, forgiving ourselves and forgiving others. My study of forgiveness through the scriptures, through psychology, and so forth is we really can't forgive anyone else. We can only forgive ourselves. Okay. And that's where again, getting back to our purpose is to understand our reality and our purpose. So I'm going to talk about two separate realities. There's sub realities, but the two separate realities that I'm going to talk about. I don't know how many of you have seen the Matrix. It's kind of an old series of movies, but if you haven't seen it, it's probably on YouTube. Watch it. It was great because it showed a world with separate realities, a blue pill, a red pill, and so forth. Okay, so we here, most of our audience today is in the turtle island called America. So we're by accident born here or we emigrated here and live here now. Okay, so that's one huge reality. Okay, because that's our environment, our national identity, what we interact with daily. Okay, and then the other reality, to me, the real reality is humanity. Okay, so that's why I wear proudly my world citizen shirt. I Being American to me, quote, American is way down on my list of identity, of true identity and purpose. Yeah, I mean, it's a reality that I have to live with daily. Okay, just like the sub reality in America. And now, because people watch America and try to emulate us and copy us to their own detriment, uh, a, a major sub-reality here, or subculture. The same thing. We're talking about culture. We're talking about American culture, human culture, and the subculture is race. Okay, race. I'm white identified race. Okay, even though the name of my book is I Am Not White, the first page has a author's disclaimer saying, yeah, I know I can say I'm not white, but I'm identified white. I have all of the unearned privilege of being white. I can't take that away. I mean, there's no way I can hide it. I could do blackface, I could do all kinds of things, but there's no way I can deny that I'm identified as white in this culture. And so now I have to figure out how to utilize that to what? To reach atonement, to reach my purpose, okay, at one mint. And the first thing is to understand where it came from. And we know race, the whole concept of white, black, race, Caucasian, and so forth, uh, was invented by the Europeans in the early 1300s or before, around that period, to justify slavery. There was no scientific basis for it, although it was a pseudoscientist in Portugal that started the concept of race and so forth. And by the way, it's all documented. Anything I say, a lot of it is opinion. I'm very strongly opinionated based on my experiences, what I've learned through the years. But I always try to back it up with references, with science, with history, so that people can objectively check it out for yourselves. Don't believe what I'm saying. Don't believe anything that I'm saying. In my book, I have plenty of references, so you can go check out. Okay? Even my own kids. Well, I tell them don't believe everything I say, believe some of it, right? But seriously, um, this book, I don't know if you can see it here, The Sovereign Psyche by Ezra Arahon, Systems of Chattel Freedom versus Self-Authentic Freedom, okay? Ezra is a professor, Ezra Arahon is professor of sovereign studies at Delaware State University, a whole department of sovereign studies. And he wrote the books and came up with the concept of the sovereign psyche. Okay, meaning you independently investigate truth. Okay, don't be ruled by other people's truths. Okay, we each have a mind and heart of our own to be able to discern truth on our own. You don't need my truth. All I can do and all we can do to each other is lead each other to sources so that you can investigate truth for yourself. So he documents how certain cultures, subcultures, especially he calls them Africans in America instead of African Americans, uh, quote, black people in America, how they emigrated, different parts of the world and were colonized and so forth. But their history is of being sovereign, of rulers, kings and queens ruling themselves. Okay. But the way they ruled traditionally was not as oppressors, but as cooperators, as givers. Remember, I talked about the takers and the givers. Okay. And then they came in contact with tribes, unfortunately, that looked more like me, that were takers, you know. And so that's where the clash happened. And somewhere along the line, they lost as a people, as a cultures, as subcultures, they lost their sovereign psyche. In other words, they became ruled instead of becoming rulers. And becoming a ruler, by the way, is ruling your own self. That doesn't mean oppressing someone else, which is our common concept of ruling. And so this is a fantastic book. This is my Bible, really, about all of these topics. He has several books, but this is really what it's all about. And he traces historically how we ended up the way we are. We're England and Europe, which small percentage, of the world's landmass and population ended up ruling the whole world and colonizing the whole world. Okay. And so now he also shows that um, they figured out after a European, one of their own, Hitler figured out, oh, I can use that same mentality to rule over other white people, to rule over Europeans, and created the Nazis, and their whole hierarchy, sorry, of false, supremacy, white supremacy. And so no longer could they use military might to conquer the world. So instead, they decided to use financial and economic means, and that's when the World Bank was created and so forth, to continue us as slaves, as chattel, as what he calls chattel freedom. We think we're free, but we're really slaves to this economic system that's been created, and slaves to these terms like I'm white and you're black, and and so forth. Just because you're white doesn't mean you're right. Just because you're black doesn't mean you have my back. One of my favorite sayings from a friend of mine, Haroon, brother Haroon. Uh, but anyway, these artificial divisions. Uh, so we have to understand, in order to understand our purpose, we have to understand our environment. We have to understand our authentic identities. It starts with my authentic identity, okay? And that's why I say I'm not white. Yeah, you can call me white, but I'm Italian. I mean, I'm of Italian descent. That's what I own. Okay, so I put together these worksheets called Radical Authentic Personal Identity Worksheet. By the way, my book is just a story of my search for my authentic identity my whole life, and the actions that I took as I learned more to become one, to atone, uh, you know, for the things. Not It's not guilt. I don't have white guilt. I have white atonement. Okay, I'm learning how to be one. One man's journey from whiteness to oneness is the subtitle. Okay, so each one of us, all of us, I'm not telling you, a person of color, you can call yourself black. You can own that. Black is beautiful. That's up to you. But remember, as Ezra teaches us, we were not, nobody considered themselves white or black until America set up its slavery system to distinguish between white and black. White people who came here from Europe, quote, white people, considered themselves Irish, Italian, French, whatever their culture was. That's their reality. That was their authentic identity, which was stripped from them to become white. And now, not only are you white, but you're superior. You have a full sense of superior to people of color. Okay, to black people, black especially. Okay, that was an invention that they adopted. Who's not going to very few people are not going to say, "Oh no, I don't want this position of unearned privilege that you're giving me." Okay, so they became white, and some of them gave up their subcultures. Many Irish, Italians, Germans. They don't really know much about their real culture, their authentic identity, and the same is true for quote black people, Africans in America. They didn't consider themselves black. They were all different skin tones. Now we have colorism based on how dark or light or you are, whatever. They consider themselves Igbo, Yoruba, Shanti, whatever tribe, nation, culture they came from. Not black. These are American terms. Okay, they're really the slavers' terms. The slavers labeled us white and black. Okay. And most of you, many, I'm sure all of you know this. Okay. To some extent, excuse me, to some extent it's taught in schools. I say to some extent, very little extent, but it's taught. And now, of course, they're trying to suppress the teaching of any of these truths. any black history or true cultural history. So we're left to find our own identity, authentic cultural identities, and so forth. And so I put together worksheets for that on personal identity search. Okay. So I've touched on atonement. I've touched on race and the fact that, you know, we are the human race, but the reality is that we've been divided into races. That's a reality. We're living that reality now. Okay. We can accept that and now move on, but not till we accept that. We're not post racial in any sense, not since because Obama was elected. We're not post racial. Okay, because we still have the massive inequities. Remember, we're only a country 60 years old, okay, in our new birth. So we have to accept the reality, but we have to move towards self authentic freedom, okay, as the subtitle of that book is, uh, by learning, you know, how to move beyond race, but first acknowledging it and acknowledging the massive inequities that the systemic racism in America created and creates around the world. Okay, so once we address that with what's the next topic today? Reparations. So once we address that with reparations, first you have to accept it. America has never admitted to it. We've admitted to the Holocaust of the Jews, but we have not admitted to the Holocaust of Africans in America. You know, and why haven't we admitted? People always wonder, why can't we just admit it and apologize? Well, it's a little more complicated than that because our economic capitalist system is based on money. It's based on litigation. Okay, so if I admit a wrong to you, then you can turn around and sue my butt. Okay, that's just how our legal system works. And if blacks in America, if Africans in America sued over reparations or sued over the Holocaust, then I mean every advancement that we enjoy today is liable. Every company, every company, not only in the South, but in the whole country, banks, insurance companies, you know, and so forth. So it's a very tricky subject, reparations, on how we reach it. We have to come to some kind of mutual agreement. I mean, I have my ideas, and actually, a conservative Republican friend of mine. By the way, there are good these labels again used to divide us, the subcultures, political labels, and so forth. And I've had my biases. I have my biases. If you're conservative Republican, right away you're the enemy. I mean, that's my bias. That's part of my experience. But luckily, I learned by forming a coalition here in Cobb County, Georgia, where I'm at, when our local government was not being transparent and accountable about spending millions of dollars that we didn't have to help a ball team come here, a billionaire-owned baseball team. You may know what I'm referring to. Guess what? We formed a coalition. This is one of my proudest accomplishments because I'm a coalition builder. Okay, that's part of atonement, of oneness. Let's build coalitions together. And the more diverse, the better, because then we learn from each other about our cultures and subcultures and how to be one. Okay. So this coalition, we had the Tea Party and the new Black Panther Party, sitting at the same table working together. We had immigrants, undocumented immigrants, and anti-immigrants sitting at the same table. We formed the most diverse, politically ideological coalition. The New York Times even said in one of the most diverse coalitions in the country. So through that, I actually got some conservative Republican white friends. Um, and, there's certain things we didn't agree on, but who agrees on everything, even within your own family? And so we found out each other didn't have horns. And so I've been learning from them and keeping in touch with them. Of course, with the aberration of the 45th president, I'm not even going to call his name, that broke up most of those coalitions because it made America hate again, not great again. Okay, so we're still healing and trying to dealing with that repercussion, another whole subculture there. But it's all tied in because that what he did was he built upon the old America. Okay, yes, make America great and make America hate. Let's pick all these groups to hate: immigrants, Muslims, gays, trans, you name it. Uh, of course, black people too, and and uh, and that's how he built his coalition based on what? White supremacy, because white identified people are suffering. Why? Because they don't have their authentic identity and purpose. You can't have your true purpose if you don't have your true identity, if you don't know who you are to start with. Okay? We we the reason why, another great book, White Fragility, the reason why white identified people, and why I'm not white anymore, are really the weaker group subculture. Just like men are the weaker gender. Okay, anybody who has to walk around macho or believe I'm better, white supremacist, it's all because of our lack of self-esteem. We know bullies are bullies because they don't love themselves. They don't have self-esteem. They were bullied. They were not loved. They didn't have their true purpose and identity. That's why they become bullies. And by the way, that's in my first chapter. I was bullied as a kid because I have a big nose as an Italian, and my name's Pellegrino, so I was Pelican, and I was a nerd. I was blessed with smarts, which I destroyed some of those using a lot of drugs. But anyway, so that little trauma as young made me an anti-bully my whole life, which I'm thankful for. Again, we can turn our traumas into blessings. Okay, I hate to see anybody bullied, period. That's why I'm Rich, the Equalizer Pellegrino. But I have to make sure too, when I'm stopping bullying, that I don't become the bully. So again, it's always a balance. Uh, so so white identified people, white fragility, because we're weak. Of course you're weak. If you've been handed everything on a platter, if you've got unearned privilege, then you're going to be weaker than those that have to strive and struggle and are oppressed and work for it. Okay, so that's why white identified folks kill themselves in record numbers by suicide, by drug overdoses, by mass shootings, and so forth. We don't love ourselves because we don't know our authentic reality, our authentic purpose. Our authentic reality is not to be above someone else. White supremacy is the biggest lie to control white identified people. Okay, to control both so-called races. Uh, America has the greatest brainwashing system in the history of the world. That's it. There's some references to that in my book. Because what? We believe that we're better based on race, some of us. We believe we're better based on religion, Christian, because I'm a Christian, that I'm better than you. Read the Bible. That's blasphemy in the Bible to exalt yourself above another when there's millions of Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus. It's a world. I'm a world citizen. Okay? America is down here. Christianity is down here with all the other religions. You know, in America, what we have, and I'm sorry if I offend anybody, but I've studied all the religions. I've taught them even, okay, in college, in community college. Okay? We have churchianity. We don't have very little Christianity, originally Christianity. But I'll say the same. Political Islam, the so-called Islamic terrorists and so forth, that's fundamentalist Islam. That's not Islam. Islam is a religion of peace. There's so many benefits that we got in America from Islam. It's really more of an Islamic based country than a Christian based country, but I'm not going to go into all of that now. Okay. So, and Buddhism, the only faith that never committed a war to spread their, I mean, no religion spread their faith initially by war or by violence. It's just the corruption of religion. But Buddhism, Hinduism, all of these are the same. They're oneness at atonement. Okay, so uh, so we've been tricked into thinking that we're better, and then American supremacy. And I'm sorry to say that cuts across all colors: black, brown, white, Asian, Americans. A lot of us think we're the greatest place in the world. It made me cringe when my favorite president of all time, Barack Obama, would say we're the greatest country. We're great. Every country is great. I'm great. You're great. We all have greatness within us, but we're not the greatest. We could argue that we're worse than many others in our foreign policy. And look what's happening right now. We're sending money and bombs to commit genocide in Gaza, in Palestine. I have to say that. And that's why I have to emphasize I'm a world citizen right now, because that's not our authentic American purpose and identity. Not at all. To bomb, war is not. War is a racket. There's been very few righteous wars, and that's in my book. And the most decorated Marine general, Major General Smedley Butler, I highlight his book and excerpt it in my book. His book is called War is a Racket. Read that. Okay? Read it. And then you'll see our military budget here is more than all of the world's combined. Why? Because we're still trying to dominate the world, because we've spread our problems around the world when we can't take care of ourselves. Read War is a Racket. Okay, so back to reparations, because I'm running out of time, so I want to make sure I touch on everything. That I can talk for hours about all of these subjects, but back to reparations. So my conservative friend said, Rich, this country has a lot of land. The federal government has a lot of land. Remember, conservatives are against big federal government. He said, why not just give? Remember, we started out with 40 acres and a mule after Reconstruction, after the Civil War, and 40 acres is worth a good chunk right now. But why not give land? To anyone. Start out with African Americans and Native Americans, all the people that were dispossessed, our friends from coming over by the thousands on our southern border, whose countries, economies we decimated, America decimated. So this is karma coming back. Okay. And we stole Texas, California, all of it from them. So that's all history. There's plenty of land. Travel this country. There's plenty of land. We should have a Homestead Act. Some 19 families in Georgia, black families after George Floyd put their money together and bought land down near Macon. They're building a great Wakanda down there that I might invest in as well. So, and that's where intentional communities come into. So, yeah, money is good, but money, it goes in your hand and out if you don't know what to do with it. Okay. So let's start here with what the Europeans make big mistakes and learn from them much quicker than Americans. In Europe, free healthcare for all, free university, living wages, guaranteed income. The quality of life for everyone is way better than America. Okay, people of color and so forth. There's still racism and prejudice and bias, but let's take care of our basic needs first. That's reparations. And guess what? Reparations for blacks ends up helping everyone. When welfare was first created, guess who were the biggest recipients? poor white single mothers. Okay, so again, Dr. King's network of mutuality is that I can't be who I'm supposed to be if you don't become who you're supposed to be. We're all connected at one minute, atonement. And I see it's 2:45, so my hostess will be interrupting me shortly, I believe, so that we can have answer any questions. Courtney, are you there?
Boy, am I ever. And what a great segue, Richard. Let me tell you, this has been one of the most interactive, just spiking conversations that we've had during this Kwanzaa series. So I'm gonna kick right off the top, because you spoke of something very early on in your conversation when you led, and then popped in the question of gentrification. How does gentrification weigh in this conversation regarding reparations, regarding colonialism as well, which is of course the birth spot of when we talk about race relations, and why it was so significant for this small group, like you said, in Europe, how this took over the world was gentrified between from this small group saying, hey, if we can establish inferiority through race, we can get all this. So
Exactly.
weigh
And
in on that. I'm going to put
sure,
myself on mute.
sure,
Gentrification,
sure.
how that plays in.
Gentrification equals capitalism, or capitalism equals gentrification. There's good aspects of capitalism. Europe has figured out how to combine democratic socialism and capitalism to make it work for everybody. So we can learn from that. But when you put capital in front of people, when you put profit in front of people, in front of humanity, then you have the system that we have today. In the book, in Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, one of my other Bibles, okay, that I follow, he has a chapter and says capitalism equals racism, racism equals capitalism. They are twin sisters. You can't, they're conjoined. And so you can't attack racism. Dr. King called them the triple evils: racism, poverty, and militarism. We have to deal with those together. That's part of atonement or one-man, is look at the oneness. That's what the Europeans have done. They've put together a system of oneness for them, for not even for them. I shouldn't even say for them, for the elite 1% of them, because most white identified people are in the bottom rungs, but they've given a little bit more of the crumbs to stay above the people of color. So gentrification, I mean, is dealing with housing, a basic human right. Can you believe in America, when I argue for affordable housing, because we have an affordable housing coalition here? Your sister helps lead that, Monica, one of my best friends and allies. Um, is People argue and say housing is not a human right. Can you? I mean, because it's not in the American Constitution. Who cares about the American Constitution? That's a paper created by elite men that is evolving. We have to write the Constitution for ourselves. That's part of sovereign, psyche. And so of course, it's a human right. There's a declaration, Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations. That's my government, is the United Nations. My government is not the government in D.C. They're a sub government. And so, yeah, I mean, our inner cities, it's a joke. We go in, we gentrify, we kick out people who've lived there, poorer people, and then we cry about crime. I mean, it's a setup, but you know, I'm not big on conspiracy theories, although this whole system is a conspiracy. In other words, it was devised to keep people down and keep us fighting each other over the crumbs. And gentrification is one big part of it. And housing, I'm all for the what they did in Philadelphia. The organization there, they just took over empty houses everywhere, put the homeless in there and so forth. And I mean, you're going to get arrested, but that's part of any movement. You got to disrupt. And I've threatened our authorities here with that if we don't get good, decent, affordable housing.
Well, we're absolutely on the same page with that because, with the in right in line, and it's funny that you said that your conservative buddy was the one who gave the suggestion of the land. With the plantations for reparations, that is the precipice of that because again, follow me here. What's the purpose of giving someone land when we know you have to go through a gazillion permits to get anything built upon this land? So why not give us back something that we built and for years we couldn't even own?
Exactly.
Okay, so and
Exactly.
I am a true believer that the reason why our my husband and I and our family's pursuit to purchase this plantation, that's the reason why it fell through, is because it's not supposed to be something that we have to purchase. It's going to be something that is going to be given,
Ex-
as returned as it should be. And so
exactly.
at least I want to believe with our $20,000 gone that is the reason why. But I am trusting the process. Trusting the process. So you touched on something also in regards to your statement just now, which made me remember something that Dr. Umar Johnson said, and it's that do not be fooled by terms like urban removal, because what that means is Negro removal. And so urban renewal, Negro removal. Um, you just mentioned Philadelphia, as you know too. I had years in Philadelphia. Richard, I wanted to touch on something that I did not hear during this conversation, but I know your awareness of it has given you opportunity and insight on how to maneuver it. But speak on how your law degree has helped you in your understanding of how this country is set up with underneath resolutions and laws and even with taxes. Please touch on that if you will for a
Sure.
couple of minutes.
Sure. But I just have to correct you with one thing. My law degree is from the streets. Okay. My degree is in counseling, and that was given to me. Another aspect of white privilege is in my book, but uh, yeah, I've again, it's interesting that you even mentioned that, because it's an aspect of white privilege. Okay, I've been able to get jobs that required masters and PhD just because I know how to talk, sell myself, and so forth, because of this, because of my uniform. Okay, uh, and so I was also arrested with 9 felonies for selling heroin to undercover federal agents when I was a drug dealer. And there was a movie made on TV about that. It's in the book. But guess what I got? 5 years probation. If I was a person of color, this was back in the 70s, I'd still be in prison. Okay. So as I've moved through, I've been arguing with attorneys over civil rights and so forth in the courts and out of the courts for years. But as I move through, I see the unbelievable inequity, in the justice system, in every aspect of what we do. So when people, when white identified people come to me and say, "Oh man, we had it rough too. We worked hard for what we got." I said, "Okay, yeah, you did." But multiply that times 1,000 or 1,000,000, then you know what it's like to be a person of color. Maybe, okay. Well, my parents were sharecroppers. Okay, okay, great. They worked hard. That was a tough life. But guess what? They could leave and go to town and do whatever they wanted to. They were free. Okay, multiply that times 1,000 or 1,000,000. So the point is, we're, you know, we need to learn each other's realities. Uh, and uh, and the fact is, because I was bullied when I was young, I don't let people in uniform, bullies in badges, bullies in courts, bullies in judges' robes, whatever they are, I call it out. And I have to do that. Part of my allyship is because I'm white identified, I can get away with it. You know what I'm saying? So is there a
Now there's
question
a
out there?
question here on the screen. Yes.
Yeah.
And Alicia Newton, thank you and welcome, and thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, as well as posing such a incredible question that I'm sure others will be able to take in, and it'll resonate with them as well. But Alicia shares that, Rich, all of your talk resonated. The identity piece and the unity oneness piece is so central to the work. Please speak to how we walk through a process of identifying how we deprogram.
Very great. Great question. Great comment from a great sister, Alicia. Who, by the way, if you look her up on LinkedIn, you'll see all of her accomplishments. Uh, Alicia, the first thing is a very simple thing is friends, become friends. By my first 20 something years, I did not have a friend of color, a black friend or whatever. I was kept separate. I was in the movement. I was a hippie. I was a musician, played music with black people. I dealt drugs and sold and bought drugs for black people, but I was never had a black friend, was never in their home, never met their parents. Okay? So, I mean, so the first thing is make friends, and the way you do that is join groups, organizations, social groups. I'm a roller skater, go to the roller skating rink, whatever, but make connections at whatever age you're at. By the way, that this afflicts not only conservative Republicans and white supremacists, but liberals as well. Many white liberals do not have black friends. Okay, the next thing is then listen and learn. Listen to people of color. You have to learn to listen. And especially our scholars of color. They've spent their lives, teaching, researching, and teaching, not from opinion and not from a place of just hurt, oh, you're just complaining, but from a scholar using their God given talent, science, and so forth. There's plenty. I've just identified a couple of resources here. Alicia is one of them. She does diversity training at college, at corporations, and so forth. There's so many opportunities to deprogram, and it's not easy. My white bubble is very strong. That my parents, the millennials, I really only burst through it really in this new century.
Speaking on that, and this might get a little touchy, so I'm going to preface my next statement with that.
Hmm.
Richard, in your work, in your experience, because I can say what I've seen personally, but again, like you mentioned, you've been at this for decades. I literally just started really getting. Honestly started getting more into the understanding and the appreciation of the work of advocacy and community development and true oneness development after I had children. That and I think that tends to be kind of other people's motivation, because you go through things and you're just kind of like you learn to deal with it. But to see a baby and growing up a baby, and you're just like, I don't want my child to have to go through this, okay? But
Hmm.
I want to focus on, just want to pivot just a little bit right now, when we're talking about the work and the oneness, and because race is still such, and I love how you really hammer that fact home, and you understand and appreciate that. And I, like I said, I believe that is the true nucleus of true allyship. You mentioned white fragility. I love that author as far as nice racism, the way you talked about, that book being your Bible. Nice racism was mine. The library had to call me twice, like, Courtney, please return our book. I didn't have the money at the time to buy it. But I said, I was like, well, are you sure they can't go get it from another branch, because I'm not done? But even this conversation of race and as powerful as it is, I have seen, and you mentioned with the millennials, and this is why this made me think of how to pivot a little bit. Um, the millennials definitely seem to be embracing the idea of oneness a lot more, I think, openly than what our previous generations have. But it's almost as though the gender conversation, follow me, has almost pushed the race conversation out of the way. Can you speak on that just a little bit? Because like I said, I don't want to offend anyone. Don't get me wrong, but I do want to just address this. And how can we continue the spirit of oneness without making it as though this is superior to a fight that we've been fighting, you know, on
Yeah.
those fields. So yeah.
Yes, it's a difficult, yeah, it's a difficult question. But I'm in no expert on the whole gender issue, sexuality issues, and so forth. If anything, I'm the enemy to the millennials. I'm a white CIS, old guy, and so, but I entered that, I entered Black Lives Matter and the millennial organizations with that attitude. Teach me, okay? Let's sit down, but don't mute me. Teach me. Don't let me lead you. Okay, like a lot of white people or older people think that we have to lead the young people because we've been, let's face it, we've screwed up for 5 decades. We dropped the ball. Okay, so but you need facilitators that are trusted, like Alicia, who just commented. She is a expert facilitator to bring together people, diverse gender wise, diverse sexual orientation wise, race wise, and so forth, to have a discussion where people feel safe and not threatened and can work together. That's, if I have any criticism of the millennial movement, which I hope is still a movement, it's been moments, it's been movement and moment, movement and moment. And believe me, I'm invested in keeping movements going, but they haven't learned, they haven't gotten that concept of use the OGs, the old guys, use use the African concept of elders, the native concept. Okay, yes, they're your. I don't care if you consider me an enemy. I'm still showing up. Okay, so that should mean something, that let's work together, and that to me is the highest definition of love, or maybe the lowest definition of love, is that no matter what happens, we're still going to come together, you know and work it. But that was, that's a real difficult conversation because of gender identity and because it's brand new and it's been mixed up. You're right, with the whole racial struggle and so forth, but it's all about the same thing. It's all about people thinking that they're superior to other people based on an artificial, you know uh, natural occurrence or accidental occurrence. you know and so if we can get it at that level, yes, we know gay and trans people are being oppressed, killed, and so forth. Black people are, native people are, Latinx people are. We're all in this together. By the way, poor white people are among the most oppressed because nobody stands up for them. You know what I'm saying? And so that's where we have to get this oneness concept. It's a spiritual battle.
It is. And I was going to lead into, I had another question, but there was a request for the link to be dropped. So if you have a few more times to spare with us, and we have a little more moments, we have a request for the link to be dropped. And when the link is dropped, what happens is someone will come up and join the stage, and they'll ask their question in person for a person to person exchange. And so I am going to drop the link without further ado. If you have a few more moments to spare, and we can keep this conversation going. And I love it when this energy is like this. I want to thank all of you all for participating. This is the highest amount of participation that we've had during a live conversation. Usually people get comfortable with listening to the playback, but I guess they said, no, we're going to tune in today. So this has been awesome. The link has been dropped. If anyone wants to come up, I'm going to leave it down in the chat room. You can just click on it, you come up, and we will have you ask your question directly to Richard. And yep, uh, this is, you haven't met him personally yet, but this is my husband actually coming to the stage, Richard, with his question.
Yeah, I saw him. How you doing? I saw you on the first episode. It was great on Unity.
Yeah. First off, peace, blessings.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna get right into it. You were speaking on coalitions, and my question for you is, with the coalitions, first let me give you quick background, and then I'll ask my question. So, as you know, me and my wife, we was trying to purchase the plantation, and that fell through, and we redirected and tried to become more inclusive. And it didn't go as planned. In fact, it was a disaster. And we was able to catch it before it became more of a disaster. Now, how would you bring someone into your coalition who is against the coalitions? Like, say someone as far as myself, because I believe that we have to help ourselves. I think that when we become inclusive, we lose our identity and we start to compromise, and that kind of it redirects whatever we were trying to do because of the compromise. So, how would you bring someone into a coalition who's against these coalitions? Like, what would you say to someone like me?
Well, is it brother Corey? I'm sorry, your name again?
Oh, I'm sorry, Devon.
Devon. Um, yeah, I mean, when we form a coalition, number one, if you quote against the coalition, I wouldn't invite you or include you. The idea is we work with the willing. We don't try to force people in or out of a coalition. Now, you exclude yourself. We invite every like-minded and sometimes not like-minded groups, like I said in this ideologically diverse one, um, and we lay out the rules, the conditions. Okay, we have to lay out the rules, and like in any group, even in my own family, my family council. I'm probably good at coalition building because I have 8 kids and in-laws and just our family councils. Everybody's still an individual. Okay, even though you're part of the Pellegrino coalition. Okay, just because I'm chairing the meeting, and I might just be chairing the first one, we might rotate that. It's not my coalition, it's your coalition. You retain your individuality. If you're an organization in a coalition, you retain your agenda and so forth. We're not trying to control that, you know, and we're trying to find common ground issues that we can all agree on and work on together. It might only be one, doesn't matter. But And if you're not, then fine. You've self-excluded. We haven't excluded you, you know, and that's how we operate. And we've had to drop some people. Like, one rule is we don't usually even have to state it, but I'm going to start stating it more, is that you don't go, if we have internal emails and communications about our business or our committees, you don't take that outside of the coalition. We've had groups that have done that, gone to the elected officials with our internal stuff. And I had to say, no, no, thank you, goodbye. Or you can stay, but you can't do that again and do damage control or whatever. But part of it again is having a good facilitator. I'm often asked to be, because one thing about being an outsider, which I often am, because I'm usually the minority, being a white identified person, is, an outsider can sometimes gain more respect or attention. Just like why I like diverse coalitions. Okay, if you have an all black anything, all white anything, guess what takes place? The hookup mentality. Any culture, anything. We take each other for granted. We think we know what we can get away with and what we can't. But when you mix the cultures, people are more careful because they don't know. Am I going to offend you? If I do this and that. So diversity is important, but ground rules as well. And I'm happy to, consult with you guys more offline about the coalition. That's what I have on my business card, Rich Pellegrino, Coalition Builder. And people that don't read it closely say, oh, you're a home builder. I say, yeah, that too, maybe.
Well, I thank you for the words, and we appreciate you coming onto the platform and sharing your experience and your wisdom and your words. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Now we do have and I, like I said, I definitely didn't want to I know that this is the middle of the day, and people still are preparing for their New Year celebrations or their New Year events, but like you said, this conversation can go on, and I love it. Alicia has presented another question as well, or basically not a question, but more so a comment, and I wanted to share this with you because again, as my husband Devon just stated, you know, we kind of realize and appreciate that yes, we want to be able to build true villages, and true villages are, you know, we come together off of common needs. And so as brother Peter Brown said yesterday, I'm telling you, you guys on a panel together would be significant, it would be phenomenal. But he said it's a common unity, and so that's what community is. And so our common need that we saw immediately was housing, of course, and food. You know, there's food deserts. We live in a area that is kind of on the cusp of, and when I say the cusp of, it is, though there are grocery stores, you know, Publix, Walmart, Kroger, very close, you're dealing with a community that necessarily they're working so much. By the time they get out of work, they don't have, you know, access to go to the store. And then if because of the area with the cost of housing, they don't qualify for food stamps, but they're not able to make their dollars stretch as need be. So we wanted to provide that to our, you know, from our space, no matter race. It was the common unity or a common need for these things. So, you know, we want to continue to approach this conversation, especially as we head into the new year with reformatting and redeveloping our initiative as well. So Alicia states intersectionality is real, but my racial identity has impacted me primarily. Facts is race is most emotionally charged and therefore skirted. But we must keep the conversation about race up front. And I said, absolutely amen to that. One last comment also. um, in Jean Hudley. So I am going to scroll back up here and grab your question because yes, I saw that it came in right after Alicia's and right before my husband jumped up on the panel. She wants in Jane Hudley wants to know, have you had the opportunity, and I'm going to post it here as well. Have you had the opportunity to talk to Jane Elliott about this racial divide and her positions on ways to deprogram? I know that's for you, Richard, but after you answer, I'm gonna chime in what I think about Jane Elliott too. But go ahead and I'm gonna let you go ahead and answer because I know that's for you.
No, no, Sister Jean. By the way, Sister Jean Hudley has a award-winning program, Boys to Men. Now it's Boys and Girls. Well, Boys to Men and Girls. I forget the other part. In Atlanta here, fantastic work. One of my mentors. She's one of my mentors as well as Alicia. So I have to be totally transparent about that. Um, and no, I haven't talked to Jane. I just read some of the things about her, and I mean, I like it, just like I like white fragility and all of that, um, but not to be critical at all. Um, I guess I'm trying to move. You know, uh, there's still a segment of white identified people that are figuring out about their white privilege and all of that. Um, and that's good. It still needs to happen. But I think, in light of the times, in light of the urgency of what's going on, I think we need to quickly move beyond that. But anyway, that's my short answer to that. But yeah, I mean, her work is definitely popular, and the most important thing about being popular is that more people are exposed to it. So that's good. But go ahead, Courtney, with your reaction to that. And thanks, Sister Jean, for that and for being here as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Sister Jean. And I thank you, Richard, because I love that you said what you said because I think that that is in perfect alignment with I didn't want to give it too much time because the work is still in the streets, and I think I used to be a big follower of Jane. I want to say that, and like you said, Richard, her work is important, but I kind of created not created, but got a little brick wall when she said, when the question to her was posed about reparations, and she said, well, you know, the African Americans are, of course, they should get it, but not before the Native Americans because they were here first. And I thought, wow, I don't recall seeing any of your sessions asking people would they rather be Native American. Like you literally are moving aside the group that you know is so really oppressed with this uh, title, with this race title. But when it came about, hey, any type of reparative justice, you say, well, let's do the Native Americans first, and then also too, let's do some studying and let's do some understanding and appreciation of our history, of our culture, and of our where we derive from, and knowing that just because someone is black does not mean they are not a Native American. That is the new understanding. So let's be
Interesting.
appreciative of that. That you know that we're not separate. there are plenty that came, but there is also evidence to support there were plenty that were already here and that were put into this servitude. And they, whether when they married or they were just again having a common unity with the people coming in, they got identified and sold into slavery as well, even though being Native Americans. So let's stop that distinction as well. And you have one final comment. I was saying that was the final, but we have one from none other than Miss Pellegrino herself. What advice do you have for younger generations who want to live a more woke and purposeful life, but don't know where to start? I think you
That,
kind of covered that in earlier when you said to kind of make friends and make friends. But go ahead. I'm going to let you answer and close us out. Thank you again, Richard, for being here. I'm removing myself.
okay, thanks. Yeah, Asia Pellegrino, I think I know her. That's my youngest daughter, youngest of 8 kids. And she's been uh, an activist in her own right at school, walking out, protesting at school and so forth. So thank you for be confirming that I brought you up correctly. I'm giving myself the credit again. But anyway, for is to what I've done my whole life, either intentionally or unintentionally, but I've been open to it, is look for mentors. I still have mentors. I'm 69 years old, and I have mentors that are 85, 90, 95 years old that I still keep in regular touch with. And guess what? I have mentors who are younger than me as well, like Alicia, like Jean, and so forth. Though Jean, I'm not sure if she's younger, but anyway, uh, and so it's important to have, not necessarily be a follower because that's cultish, but have mentors and be a mentee your whole life, and people that you can follow, that you can learn from, and then of course there's books. I know a lot of young people don't like to read books. That's why whole books, or they like to read them online or listen to podcasts and so forth. But there's plenty of good. And in my book, I have references of the people who've helped me along the way, who've written, scholarly people who've written and produced things. And I did condense my book. Here's a shameless plug into for younger people or older people or anybody who doesn't like to read a book, into condensed 200 pages into 60 pages, and it's a PDF, which I'm happy to send to anybody. If you go to the website, the email address is there. But the main thing, and again, not a shameless plug, but is that young people need to listen to older people. I mean, uh, that every culture, the elders have, the wise elders, and you can determine by your own values what's a wise elder, have passed down the wisdom to the ages. And that really is what sustains and grows and progresses a culture. And we're right now at a time where we need to learn to work intentionally in intentional communities together. Uh, so that's some of my advice, um, to my youngest daughter and anyone else that cares to listen. So thanks. I guess I'm supposed to wrap it up now. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Uh, you taking some time out today. Uh, some of you I know, some I don't know, and happy to make the book available. I'm not trying to make money off it. If you need a free copy, let me know. I'll mail you one. If you want the PDF copy, it's available on Amazon. If you want to buy it, it's cheap, $10. Amazon gets most of that. Um, and other resources. The sheets that I have, these worksheets on discovering your authentic personal identity, and another one, your authentic national identity. Happy to send these to you. I'm going to be doing these workshops virtually and in person at least monthly. So if you want to get on that mailing list, please do. And that's really all I have to say, is that, um, in the words of a few of my favorite slogans, think globally and act locally. Right now, this time is it's a momentous but tragic time. There's a window opening up that may never be open again in our lifetimes, and that is because of the live genocide that we're witnessing in Gaza. By the way, this is not being committed by Jews, being committed by a corrupt government in Israel, and it's not being committed by Americans, rank and file, but by our corrupt foreign policy government. And so, but it's happening in front of our eyes. We can't ignore it thanks to social media, thanks to cell phone cameras. And this, I, I, I've never gotten so many questions on why. You know, I started this Global Woke Institute to teach us how to be woke globally, not only America. When we say Black Lives Matter, let's mean all Black lives everywhere, in Africa, in the Middle East, and so forth. All lives matter, of course. Black Lives Matter always said that, but they said Black Lives Matter also, or too. So let's all get together and figure out how to make peace for the new year. Peace in our own lives, peace in our communities, because we're shooting each other. Gun violence is unbelievable. That's all part of this lack of personal identity, of authentic purpose, and peace in the Middle East. And it's for our own good, believe me. I don't want to scare people, but start to think about surviving together. Intentional community. Do watch the new movie out on Netflix. I'm not making any money off of it. Leaving the World Behind, which Michelle and Barack Obama helped produce, because it is very timely. And with that note, I will leave you to enjoy the rest of Kwanzaa and the New Year holiday, and the MLK days coming up, and other holidays as well. Thanks again for hosting this, Courtney. Also, look at their Plantation for Reparations website and the great work they're doing in Athens. We need to do more of that intentional community. Ciao, which is Italian for bye.